What's up, everybody? Welcome into this week's edition of Pickup Sports Talk. I'm Spencer Stein.
And I'm Brandon Schiffman. We have a ton to get to this week, including NBA playoff action, some MLB, and a small little sample of our NFL mock draft.
Yeah, we're going to do a little preview before our full mock draft next week, but there is still stuff to get into today. But first, let's start with the game ones. We've only seen the game ones of every series. And I would say, no doubt, hands down, the best game has been Celtics-Nets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the game really had everything you want, playoff basketball. There were some dramatic moments. There was a game winner, which I was not expecting. And both teams really played a great game. Like, you can't say one team really dominated the other.
So, yeah, I want to start by talking about the Celtics side. So, that was a great game-winning play. I really love everyone's kind of talking about the player development of Marcus Smart. Yeah. You know, with a few seconds, they didn't call a timeout because they knew the Nets were discombobulated. They kicked it out to Marcus Smart, 3 seconds, 2 guys on him. Normally, he would have taken that open 3 and say, pump fakes, takes a dribble. Jason Tatum does a spin move, lays it in right in time. Yeah. It was a beautiful play, and I love just the overall coaching they've had this year in this game by Ime Udoka. And he really showed that they're a better coach team. They're a more together team than the Nets. And the Nets, on paper, they're good. But they really, there's a good image of them, but who knows if they can put it together. There's still drama going around there with, Kyrie and the Boston fans. Who knows what Nash could do. Yeah. It's the Celtics have shown that even though the Nets could very possibly win this series, they're the 2 seed for a reason.
Yeah, for sure. I think that the Nets' biggest problem is when push comes to shove and times get tough, the ball's going to KD or Kyrie. You look at it, you see Dragic had a good game. Then you had a few other guys Drummond got into foul trouble early. Yeah. But, in the fourth quarter, when the ball's dribbling down the floor, you see the 3 other guys on the court. Normally it's Bruce Brown, Claxton, and then maybe, Dragic. You know none of them are going to wind up with the ball in this possession. And it becomes predictable after a while.
It was a horrible final play for the Nets. They could have scored and put it away. It was horrible. They went Kyrie ISO. Yeah. What kind of play is that? They should have put a pick and roll, no doubt. Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant. Said Kyrie Irving ISOs, they think, just because he is 39. Did have a great game. He was going to do something. But the Celtics, were just a superior team. Al Horford put up 20 and 15, right?
I've seen that
and
since 2013.
We saw in the last possession, he made the smart play. He knew Kyrie wasn't passing it. He went and doubled. And Kyrie still tried to dribble around. I thought he was going to shoot anyway. They did not trust anyone else on the court. And then kicked it to KD. And with KD, Jason Tatum on Kevin Durant with 4 seconds, Jason Tatum showed he's there. And I want to talk about Kevin Durant for a minute.
Yep.
I'm not going to go to the extent to say he's overrated. I know I've been kind of having some private conversations with you about Kevin Durant. But I do not think he's in the same world as Jordan, LeBron, Magic, Kobe, those greats. And I would even say I think in a few years we're going to see Giannis's career is better than Kevin Durant's. Here's why. Kevin Durant, his 2 titles, came on a team where he was not the leader. Draymond Green was the emotional leader. He was not the most important. He was not the most important player. Stephen Curry was the most important player. They also had guys like Klay Thompson on that team. Yes, he won MVP, but that's because the ball could just go through him. He could win with that team by just scoring. He has not shown that leadership. He has not won on his own. And I want to look at the last play last night. Jason Tatum, in that whole last 10 seconds with the Celtics having the ball, he didn't have the ball. It was Derek White passed it to Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown cut, passed it to Marcus Smart. After the pass to Marcus Smart, 2 guys closed out on him because obviously there's 3 seconds there second the shot. What did Kevin Durant do? He stood at the free throw line and stared at the play while Jason Tatum cut behind him and scored the game-winning basket. That is not something LeBron would do. That's not something Jordan would do, and that's certainly not something Giannis would do. Yes, he's one of the best scorers of all time. I will not doubt that. Yes, he's clutch in the playoffs. He's shown that. Even though he was on a great team, he did make clutch plays. And last year, even though they lost, he made clutch plays. But he doesn't show the same leadership, the same playing hard every single play that the greats do. And I think by the end of his career, that's going to be shown.
Yeah, I get what you're saying there.
Or that'll be remembered.
Yeah, in the sense that, these other guys, their resumes speak for themselves. There's Kevin Durant. He's more of a player you see on the court and think he's great, but then you look at the resume, he joined a 72-win team and then he won. It took so much for him. And the truth is, with Kevin Durant, we've never really seen him on his own. Even in the OKC days, he always had 2 other great players, another great player with him. Golden State always had a great player. Now he has another great player. I think that the thing that people need to realize about Kevin Durant is he's a guy who's exceptional on the court, but the stat line and all these other things will always be pulling him down at the end of the day.
But I think having help doesn't hurt you. If he goes and wins a title with this Nets team, that'll be impressive. That will build him up his resume. I still don't think he's a great leader or defender, but that'll build up his resume. Because LeBron had help. LeBron had Kyrie. Jordan had tons of help. He had basically a version of a super team in my eyes. I think Scottie Pippen, Dennis Rodman, that's a great team. But Kevin Durant went to a team who had just won a title, and he wasn't the leader there. Like, at least with LeBron and Jordan and Giannis, they have good teams around them, but they're the clear leader. Kevin Durant was not the leader of that team, so I think that's something I want to point out. Let's talk about Kyrie for a second. He promised Boston he'd stay there a bunch of years ago, then he left. Now he hates the fans. And after the game, he was like kind of blaming it on them. We saw throughout the game they were mocking him, and then he was
bouncing back.
Yeah, he was bouncing back. In layman's terms. So, Brandon, what do you have to say about the whole Kyrie versus Boston fans conflict?
Honestly, like I don't want to say I love it, but like I really like it. I think a lot of, and this is like a personal me thing. I think a lot of fans believe that they're like immune to everything just because they know like, oh, this player's about to get fined. And I think Kyrie, like almost talking back to the fans, shows that like these players like. They like deserve to be at like the spot they're at. Like Kyrie, like these players, I'm not saying should be talking, but they definitely have the right to talk. Like think about what they've done in their career. Like and when these fans were talking to Kyrie, he was talking back, and he had a great game. To be fair, he backed it up. If they won that game, I think it would have been a different story. Like I don't know how far Kyrie would have gone with some of his trash talks.
So I love the back and forth between them. A lot of people won't. I do like it, but I really hate Kyrie Irving. I'm gonna be honest. I do not like this Nets team. Kevin Durant's one of my least favorite players in the NBA. I think he's a snake. That's just me. Nothing personal to Kevin Durant. I just did not like his move to the Warriors. And Kyrie Irving now, this back and forth, he's very hateable. I think this is a hateable team. As a Laker fan, it's hard to root for the Celtics, but I really am. I think Kyrie will get fined. I think it's fine that he talked back. I think as a fan, it's interesting. I like that he did that, but the NBA should fine him. He did do some pretty obscene things. I'm excited to see Wednesday night in Boston, what they come with, and I'm definitely rooting hard for the Celtics. I love the Celtics team. Marcus Smart, as I said, the player progression he's shown by passing the ball there in the last seconds of shooting it.
He's always been one of my favorite players.
Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. I used to hate Marcus Smart at Oklahoma State. Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum are great. Al Horford's back and doing things like Derek White was a great move at the deadline. This Celtics team is well built, and I'd really love to see them take down the Nets.
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of people are starting to like be put on notice by the Celtics team for sure.
Yeah, and I definitely do not like that Nets team whatsoever. Let's move on to the Bulls. Your Bulls. Just because, it's still a Chicago podcast to an extent. They lost to the Bucks 93-86, kept it closer than we thought. Brandon, what are your takeaways from the game?
Honestly, like I was watching them, I was expecting us to lose by like 50. Like I can't lie to you. We were down like 9-0.
21-7.
21-7. Like it was clear that the Bucks should have won this game by a lot more than they did, but the Bulls kept fighting. There were points in the game where I thought we were going to genuinely win, which called me crazy. Like we were up 5 and like halfway through the fourth quarter. So the Bulls didn't have a bad game. But it really did expose some of the flaws on our team. We lack defense, like, at the center position. And it's hard to say we need someone who's able to keep up with Giannis. But, like, a center, like, I'm thinking, like, a center that can keep up with Giannis would probably help us out a lot. Because Vucevic great offensively, but defensively.
Vucevic was your best player last night.
He tends to fall out. And Zach and DeMar were not shooting the ball particularly well. Just a lot went wrong for the Bulls. With that being said, though, Kobe White is a great spark plug player. Like, I really like watching him play. You can put him in at any point in the game. He'll get you 5-10 points. Caruso, I think, had like 2 or 3 steals in like a 5-minute span alone. That really turned the game around for us. So there were some highs, there were like some lows too. Like it went both ways.
I'm going to say 2 good things about the Bulls, and then before I start hating on them. First, they kept it closer than I thought, and there was a point where I genuinely thought they would win. Giannis got his 5th foul. The Bulls were up 1. I was like, they could have a chance this game. Secondly, I think the refs favored the Bucks. There was that call late. Patrick Williams was boxing out Giannis. It was clearly over the back, and they called the foul on Patrick Williams, not Giannis. That would have been Giannis' 6th. He would have been out of that game. So I will say that if Giannis fouls out, maybe the Bulls win this. DeMar DeRozan, in his career, has been swept 3 times. The second he leaves Toronto, they win a championship. He has not done much in the playoffs. There's famously a series where LeBron James outscored DeRozan and Kyle Lowry combined. This Bulls team is going to get swept. It's going to be DeMar DeRozan's 4th time in his career. I wasn't saying it earlier. Now I'm going to say it. If anything, this game helps the Bulls. But do you see that? They're 0-4 versus Milwaukee this season. Now 0-5.
It's tough.
They haven't beat a top 6 team in the East. I remember a bunch of weeks ago, a lot of people were talking to me about the Bulls this, the Bulls that. I said, wait for the playoffs to come. Because they cannot play against good teams. And now that we're here, everyone seems to quiet down. So I'm hoping to go to one of the playoff games. I am rooting for the Bulls to maybe get 1 game. Maybe then the whole season won't be a wash. I think they're going to get swept.
I'm still keeping some hope just because, we showed in this game, I'm not saying we're, in this series to win it, but we do belong in this series. We're not some scrub team
I
that
agree.
happen to make it.
So here's what I want to ask you. Back when the DeRozan trade was made, and the Vucevic trade, going back to before we were on video, I said, the Bulls are striving for mediocrity. And throughout the season, it looked like I was wrong. They were a top team. They were the 1 seed to point, and they showed that they can compete. But now they're back, and now it's like Bulls fans are hoping they get one win in the first round. Do you think that they were striving for mediocrity looking back on the moves for DeRozan and Vooch?
I honestly, call me crazy, I don't. I think there was a time when the team was fully healthy where we looked like a championship caliber team. I don't think you can deny
Yeah,
that.
but I think a lot of people saw through it.
I mean, injuries were the thing that really killed us.
You have one injury.
But with COVID, we're the hardest hitting team by COVID. We lost all of our momentum. With the Caruso went down, Levine went down, Lonzo went down. And Patrick Williams was out for I want to say
3/4 of the year.
Yeah, he played 6 regular season games. So I think all that really hurt us. But there was a point in the season, and I guarantee you, majority of our viewers will agree with me, where it looked like the Bulls could have potentially made a run.
I don't know. I think a lot of teams have been hit by injuries, and everyone keeps talking about the injuries. They have one guy out now. All teams have injuries that they've had to deal with. And even when the Bulls were playing at a top level, I think anyone should have been able to see that they're not beating the Bucks, they're not beating the Nets, they're not beating the Celtics, they're not beating the Sixers, they're not beating the Heat.
I mean, it's a fair take. I just think that there was a point in time when people agreed that the Bulls were a contender, and to say they weren't would be...
Well, they're not.
Well,
now it's showing that they're not. So let's move on from the Bulls. They'll be lucky to get a game. How about the Wolves Grizzlies? 1-8. So the question here is, what game surprised you the most? For me, it was Wolves Grizzlies.
Yeah, for sure.
Because after the Wolves won their playing games, I said, you know what? I think they're going to take the Grizzlies 6 games. I think this will be an interesting series. I did not expect them to go into Memphis and take game 1. They really impressed me. I mean, on paper, the Wolves have always been expected to be good. We've talked about this in past weeks, but they never have. Now it's really like they are. Anthony Edwards is great. He has officially surpassed Damian Lillard as my favorite player in the league. Anthony Edwards. I'm hopping on that bandwagon. Pat Bev's playing like old Pat Bev. You know, I used to hate him when he was on the Clippers, but now that he's on the T-Wolves and
I love his mentality.
Now that he's not going against the Lakers, I like him. Cat is obviously playing at an elite level, and he didn't even have to play at an elite level for them to win.
D'Lo, Malik Beasley.
Everything's going right for them. I would argue that the Grizzlies and Wolves are the 2 most exciting teams. I mean, they're my 2 favorite teams to watch, so it's sad that one of them is going to have to go. But what do you think about this series? Do you think the Wolves stand a chance?
Honestly, I think after this win, it'd be hard to say they don't stand a chance. I think the Grizzlies could probably still close.
So do you still favor the Grizzlies?
Yeah. I think that the Grizzlies, they've always been good at, this season at bouncing back. If they have one bad game, they'll come out and they'll play, a different style. Or not a different style, but they'll play with, a different mentality. I believe that the Grizzlies will do it. With that being said, though, you said it pretty well. The Wolves are a great team to watch. They're super fun, a lot of talent. It's going to come together sooner or later, and a lot of people are going to be very surprised by it. Maybe a year, maybe 2 out. But this is going to be a team that we look at as one of the better teams in the West, for sure.
So when I say I favor the Grizzlies, that's not a knock against T-Wolves. The Grizzlies are still great.
Yeah.
Just looking at their lineup, John Morant, Desmond Bane, Dylan Brooks, Jaren Jackson Jr. is a killer 4, Brandon Clark off the bench, still have Steven Adams. I think this team's going to definitely win game 2, and I think they're going to still win the series. It's close, but the T-Wolves definitely stand a chance, and as you said, they're one of the most dangerous teams. Anthony Edwards was the first pick in that draft over LaMelo, and I will say that was definitely the right call. A lot of people still think LaMelo's better than Ant, but look at what Anthony Edwards is doing. How many did he drop in the play? 39 maybe?
Yeah,
he has dropped 36 in game 1 on the road. He is a bucket. Yeah. He scores when it matters. He hits threes that are just no doubt. They still have D'Lo. Pat Bev brings all the energy. I love this T-Wolves team. I'd love to see them go out and win. But honestly, it still surprised me that they went out and won game 1. So this is definitely a series to watch. Brandon, do you have any changed predictions?
Not really at the moment, no. My biggest thing, honestly, there have been some small injuries. For example, in the Philly series, Scotty Barnes went down. I think Embiid was doing a twist move into the lane, and Scotty Barnes stepped on him. But that doesn't really change much.
Because you had the Sixers, right?
Yeah, I still have the Sixers.
So, because for me in that series, I picked the Raptors, and no doubt I'm switching.
Yeah.
Because the Raptors, if they lost game 1 reasonably, I'd say okay. But Scotty Barnes, Gary Trent Jr., and one more name I'm forgetting, are all going to be out in game 2. And they're probably unlikely to play more. They're going to go down 0-2, no doubt, without Scotty Barnes. He's the heart of that team, and then they're going to go back to Toronto. And even if they went down 0-2, going back to Toronto, I'd say they have a chance to fight back. But the main reason I picked them is because I thought the Sixers would not look good at all. And I forgot about one guy, and it's Tyrese Maxey. I was thinking all about Harden. Harden still I don't trust, and I don't think they could beat the Heat. But Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid are enough to get past this Raptors team, especially with the injuries.
And Tobias Harris had a big game too.
Oh yeah, so the injuries is what pushed it over for me, why I changed my prediction. But the Sixers did impress me in game 1, and it's just that the James Harden trade, I think right now is not looking as good as it was supposed to be. He did have 22. He didn't play, he's not playing bad by any means, but it was supposed to be a killer duo, him and Embiid. And now we're still seeing Maxey and Tobias Harris go off, so they're good enough to beat a team like the Raptors, but it's still disappointing when a team if someone were to tell me after the trade, Joel Embiid's an MVP, maybe runner-up. Tyrese Maxey's dropping 38 in the playoffs. Tobias Harris 26, and they got James Harden. I would say that team's winning the title. And the fact that we're not saying that's still disappointing, but I think they'll get this series done.
Yeah, for sure. I completely agree. Let's get to quickly. Let's rapid fire some games. Jazz beat the Mavericks by 6, 99-93. Any takeaways from that?
Luka was out. Luka's gonna be out game 2. I want to see if they could do anything without him. They stayed closer than I thought. I thought the Jazz would win this series even if Luka played.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the Mavs can get a game without Luka. If this was a series, I would say the Mavs can get a game without Luka. Luka will come back probably game 3 in Utah. It is bleak for the Mavericks. I don't think they could take them to 7 games. I think 5 or 6, and the Jazz will get it done.
Mm-hmm. I like Dinwiddie and Brunson a lot, but I just don't.
I love Brunson.
I just don't think they have enough going on besides Luka. I think Luka's clearly the heart and soul.
And that team's in a bad spot, by the way. I think that franchise. I think Luka's great. He's one of the top 5 guys you want to start a franchise with. But what they have around him right now is not too good.
Yeah.
Dinwiddie and Brunson's good enough in the backcourt. They have nothing else. So they need to start making some moves because it's just going to be first round exit after first round exit.
Yep.
Warriors Nuggets. Warriors beat him 123-107. Big storylines. Jordan Poole had 30.
Kid's a stud. He's just like, I mean it when I say it. He's a great, great player, and I think he could potentially, there are going to be games in the playoffs, other than this one, because this one obviously stands out, where he's going to be the highest scorer and probably the best player on that team.
How about Steph Curry off the bench? Coming off injury.
He was on a minute restriction. He still played pretty well, though, right?
Yeah, this team he scored 16. This team's scary. Them versus Memphis or Minnesota is going to be a great series. What I want to talk about is the death lineup is back. If we look at the 2015 Warriors' famous death lineup, with Andre Iguodala and Draymond Green being the tallest player, I think Harrison Barnes was in it.
Yeah.
Steph and Clay.
David Lee too.
This is back, and it's the small ball lineup. It's Steph, Clay, Poole, Wiggins, and Draymond. I love that death lineup. Maybe it's even better. I won't say it's better than 2015 because Andre Iguodala did win Finals MVP, and he's not in the current depth lineup. But the offense may be better because Jordan Poole's offense over Iguodala compensates for how Clay and Steph have gotten worse. So the offensive part of that might still be as good. It's not the same death lineup. It's not the 73-win Warriors, but
still a great team.
Jordan Poole is a star in the making.
Absolutely.
And he can be an all-star. And the fact
Wiggins is an all-star starter. I mean, that was a little weird.
Yeah, but the fact that they have Poole in a backcourt with Clay and Steph, that's going to be a good lineup to watch down the stretch. And they still have Draymond, who's running things. He's team to pick it up. So the Warriors are definitely a scary team. I want to ask you a question about the Nuggets.
Yep.
Do you think that how likely is a Jamal Murray return? Because people are saying he's at full strength. He just has chosen not to. And what would that even do?
So if they go down, I'm just saying, if they go down 3-0, don't bring him back because it's gonna wind up with him getting hurt or it's too risky at that point. But if right now they're he can come back. That would be huge for them. They've played their entire season with the MVP, but without their basically without their two, their second and third best player. So I think that would help them a ton.
This applies to the Nets with Ben Simmons too. I don't think you bring a player back for the first time of the season in the playoffs. Maybe off the bench on a minutes restriction for a guy like Ben Simmons, but I think you don't change things up when you've already got to the playoffs. That's just me. That could be old-fashioned, but I think with Jamal Murray coming off an injury, you don't want his first game to be in the playoffs right here. What I do want to say is this Nuggets team is a championship contender next year. Yes, championship contender up there with Memphis, up there with Golden State, up there with Phoenix. And it's because they have the MVP in Jokic. I think Jamal Murray right now is one of, if not the most underrated player in the NBA.
Sure.
That could be because people are forgetting him because he's hurt. But in the bubble, he impressed me to a level I can't even put into words.
Yeah.
He is a bucket getter, no doubt. And they have Michael Porter Jr. I don't trust him so much, but he's definitely great. Plus their role players. Bones Highland right now is looking like their second best player. He's young, he's a rookie, and yet he's their bench.
He has so much confidence.
He only scored 10 off the bench, but looking at a team that could have Jamal Murray, Bones Highland, Jokic, MPJ, along with keeping Aaron Gordon, that is a scary team. Nuggets are looking good for the future. I don't think they should bring Jamal Murray back in the playoffs. I think they should just take their 5-game series loss to the Warriors and make this offseason a big one. I could see the Nuggets genuinely doing well next year.
For sure. I want to quickly get to the Heat-Hawks game. You have, I want to say, outspoken playoff personality, Trae Young. He got absolutely shut down.
Yeah.
I mean it when I say
8 points.
I haven't seen him play like that in a very long time. and I think the Heat just showed how dominant they were in that game.
You know, I said the Hawks would win the play-in, and people started to say, the Hawks are a scary team in the playoffs because you don't know what they can do with Trae Young. And although that's true, I still don't think they have a chance in this series. The Heat are just a better team, defensively, offensively. They did it on both sides of the ball in game one. This will continue. Like Duncan Robinson, 24 off the bench. Like this Heat team is just so deep, and the Hawks can't defend it to the extent the Heat can defend the Hawks. They were absolutely stifled. There's nothing more to say. Trae Young will come back. Yes, he'll drop 30 in a game. I don't know if they'll take it to 6 games.
Yeah, no, for sure. And the last game was Suns-Pelicans.
Yeah.
Suns blew them out, I'm pretty sure.
They won by 11.
Chris Paul, I think, had like 30 points. That was vintage. I like that. The stat line I wanted to talk about, though, is Jonas Valanciunas having 18 and 25.
It's my guy. That's who I said should be an all-star.
He's scary out there, I can't lie.
Pelicans are good. They're not going to do much.
They're a team of the future.
What I do want to say is that if the Suns win the finals, I think CP3 should be finals MVP. Like, I'm predicting CP3 for finals MVP over Booker. Could be either. Who knows what's going to happen. That's my prediction. Because he's the point guard.
Yeah.
Booker should lead this team in scoring, even though he didn't last night. But everything goes through Chris Paul. He was in the
He's the
MVP
reason
conversation.
that they're where they are right now.
And
Booker's
I know
a great player, but they would not be. They were struggling for years. They got Chris Paul. Now they look great.
And yes, and I know I feel like said like a million players are underrated this episode, but I think in the grand scheme of things all time, Chris Paul is one of the most underrated players of all time. He is up there. I think you could argue Chris Paul versus Kevin Durant, who has a better legacy. I truly do, especially if Chris Paul can get a title this year. So I love Chris Paul. I'd love to see him get finals MVP, and I'm rooting for the Suns team.
Yeah, for sure. Let's get into the playing game real quick. There's a lot, there's obviously, we've had a lot of NBA, so let's just rapid fire this. Did you or did you not like the Timberwolves celebrating their play-in win like they won a title?
So I think they have the right to celebrate. You know, I was glad to see it. I love to see Pat Bev show all that emotion. That was his revenge game against the Clippers. I love to see Ant go off. I don't think they needed to do that. I mean, you see all the things of him on the scorer's table and the confetti and Cat and it. You could do that in the moment. It was a lot. I'm not going to knock them for it because I really like the T-Wolves as a team. Do I think it was necessary? No, but what?
It was kind of fun.
I'm not some old angry NBA fan from the '60s. I'm fine. You're allowed to celebrate.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I've grown in the past few years to really like Pat Bev, so I support it. With that being said, though, I could see why some fans would be against it because
you want it to be the 7th seed. Come on now.
Yeah.
Clippers on the other end that lost to the Wolves, went at home, and then lost to the Pelicans. Yes, you could say Paul George getting COVID had a part to play in that. But what do you think about the Clippers' overall season that they missed the playoffs?
I mean,
after 2 years ago being finals favorites, even though they had injuries.
You had an MVP-looking Paul George for the first 2-3 weeks of the year.
Yeah.
He got hurt, came back right around the end of the year. Kawhi didn't play at all. I think it was a good time. They made a great trade with the Blazers. They got Covington and Powell, who are both pretty good players. So I think this year was kind of a wash. I mean, we knew that going into it. The second PG got hurt, this team wasn't going to do anything crazy. But next year, they should be trying to compete for a title. I'm not saying they will.
I mean, after 2019, there were echoes of Kawhi being the best player in the NBA.
For sure.
And the next year, before the bubble hit, they were still the favorites.
Yeah.
And the Lakers took them down. I don't think that Kawhi's back. I think Kawhi is not going to win a title ever again.
He's just missed a lot of time, and there's just a lot in the air.
And now, Father Time's going to catch up to him. Hornets, 10 seed. We weren't expecting much out of them, but they have been blown out 2 years in a row in the play-in.
They're just unlucky.
Unlucky? They're just the worst team.
They're not competing. Miles Bridges, with that being said, did hit the little girl with the mouth guard. That's pretty crazy.
That was not the nicest thing.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, Ant's better than LaMelo. How about this? Last thing with the play-in. Both 9 seeds stole a spot over the 8 seed. Does this mean the play-in is working? Do you like it? Have you come around to the idea?
I mean, I'm not super against it. In reality, it's just more basketball, and I like watching basketball. So I never really had too much of a problem with it in the first place. But it is a little strange to think that these 8 seeds just got bounced by 9 seeds in a pre-playoff setting. But yeah, I'm fine with it. I think it's doing what it was intended to do. You
know, it scares me a bit because it means the regular season means less. We see who cares if you're the 9 or 8. You could still be in a 1-game playoff to make a playoff spot. Yeah. It's interesting how the Cavs didn't make the playoffs after having such a good season. And at first I thought that was a bad thing because the regular season matters less. But you know what? It might prove something. It might put more exciting teams in the playoffs. I'm for it. It reduces tanking. I'm for the play-in as of now.
Fair. Let's get to some baseball here. I know you had some baseball you wanted to talk about, so you want to go
So yeah, I'm gonna get into something interesting that happened on Friday night. Rangers versus Angels. The bases are loaded for the Rangers. Corey Seager's coming up to hit with the base load, and they intentionally walk him. The Angels are down 1 at this point in the 4th inning, and you're walking in a run. The best MLB average of all time is like 400, and no one's come close to it since the 40s or 50s. And you're walking a guy because you're that scared. Corey Seager's a good player. Don't get me wrong. He's been an all-star. But that is not good coaching by the Angels. And if you look at Mike Trout's face after that, he was like, "Get me out of here."
Yeah, he was like counting players.
Oh yeah, the Angels won that game 9-6, but they've had Shohei Ohtani and Mike Trout longer. They haven't made the playoffs. This is sad. They need to get out of here. The Angels, I'm starting to think, might be a dysfunctional franchise. And I hate to say this about Joe Madden, but that was a horrible, horrible call.
That was ridiculous.
I can't stand that. Before we move on past baseball, I just want to say, yes, NBA playoffs are going on, but there's some good series coming up. Our Cubs are playing the Rays. The Rays are a good team. I predict them to go to the World Series, and I love watching the Cubs. Tonight, my Cy Young prediction for the Rays, McClanahan's pitching against the Kyle Hendricks at Wrigley. Mets, Giants, both teams have 7 wins, 2 of the best teams in baseball, and the Mets, their pitchers their starters through 10 games have around a 1 ERA. It's the best of all time.
Yep.
So I love both those teams, and the Braves versus Dodgers. NLCS rematch, and Freddie Freeman playing his former team. So that's just some baseball to watch. Try and get that in there in between NBA playoff games.
Yeah, for sure. Let's quickly get into we talked about earlier our mock draft teaser our sample for it. So we're gonna obviously have a full not full episode about it, but we're gonna have a full thorough.
We're gonna go through it a lot, just like we did last year. So Brandon, let me ask you this question first. Who's gonna go 1?
I believe it's Aiden Hutchinson at the moment. He reminds me a lot of the Bosa brothers in the sense that he has a lot of physical. I mean, he might not be.
That guy who said he's going to be the Bosa brothers is out of his mind. I don't think Hutchinson's on the same level as the Bosa
No, but
brothers.
he has some of the physical tools that have. Yeah. He of a pro comparison, he's obviously a more raw talent, but he reminds me a lot of the Bosa brothers. But yeah, I think he's getting the most with the NFL draft. You always see guys start to get more press coverage as the draft comes around. As the draft comes around, Hutchinson's that guy right now.
Yeah, I also think it should be Hutchinson. I don't think there's any reason for it to be anyone else. I don't think they could take an O-lineman. They could take Trayvon Walker. I don't think Trayvon Walker is better than Hutchinson, so I would go Hutchinson at 1. Who and when will the first QB go?
I think the first quarterback, let me start with this, is going to be Malik Willis. Yet again, another thing with Hutchinson.
Where, though?
I think either 6 right now with the Panthers, or if he, for some reason, doesn't get taken by the Panthers, either 8 or 9 by the Falcons or Seahawks. I think that's going to be the time when these teams that are looking for a new quarterback begin to pounce on a new quarterback.
I think it'll probably be Malik Willis. I really don't want to see it be at 6. I really think if he doesn't go at 6, he could fall all the way to 20. I hope it's at 20. Here's why. The Carolina Panthers could probably trade a 5th-round pick for Baker Mayfield.
Yeah.
And if you were to tell me you could either have Baker Mayfield and the 6th overall pick or Malik Willis, I'd take Baker all day.
Yeah.
I don't think Malik Willis is the solution there. I really like him as a person. I've heard interviews. He has an A+ character, but I don't think I trust him as a player fully. He's playing at Liberty. Who knows what that means? He was a good player. He really impressed during the combine. And yes, it's interesting. Robbie Anderson reacting to them possibly getting Mayfield said no on Twitter, or on Instagram, so that's scary. But I don't think Malik Willis has value at 6. I really don't think they should do it. I hope they don't. So I think and I don't think the Seahawks will. They could, but I see him going all the way at 20 to Steelers. I think it's a weak QB class, and I don't want to see Malik Willis go all the way at 6 to the Panthers. I think that's a bad fit. I think they could get a different guy like Baker. And they could even wait till the 2nd round, draft someone like Matt Corral. I would rather take Corral in the 2nd round than Malik in the 1st.
Yeah, I feel like if they were to take Malik that early, they'd almost be forcing it when there's that much talent still on the board.
Yeah, and I think no matter what, though, Pittsburgh will take a quarterback at 20, and I think Pickett might even be a better fit. I just love taking a hometown guy there. Brandon, who's an underrated and an overrated player that you like or dislike?
So a guy I've been seeing consistently be underrated, and I want to start with this, is Kyle Hamilton. I think, here's what I'm going to say. I think everyone acknowledges his talent. I think everyone realizes that when he makes the league, he's automatically probably going to be a top 5 safety. But the truth is people don't see a safety as one of those positions that's ultra valuable, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
People are going to overlook him just because of his position, but in reality, if there was a top 5 guy guaranteed at any other position, they'd be taking him probably with the 1. He's 1-pick talent, first overall pick talent. The issue is that people don't value the safety position as much.
I was going to go exactly with that. Kyle Hamilton, and he's still a great player. I just think there shouldn't be a world where he falls outside the top 5. He is a difference maker. We know what we're getting with him. I also want to throw in Stingley Jr. Yes, he's coming off injury, but I think he's better than Sauce Gardner. I really do. And I don't think there's any reason for the Lions to take Sauce Gardner or Malik Willis for that matter at 2. I think at 2, the Lions should fully go O-tackle, defensive end, straight up. But I think Kyle Hamilton's going to be great, and I think Stingley's going to be great. What I do want to point out is that at number 12, the Minnesota Vikings have a good chance at getting a corner that sides them like Stingley, maybe Sauce Gardner, maybe Kyle Hamilton. And the Vikings can be a scary good team if they get that. So I'm just hoping, for the sake of the NFC North, that someone else steals Stingley and doesn't let the Vikings go get him, because their defense is what's lacking, and especially their secondary. So if they could get a big-time player like Stingley, who's really make or miss, they could really, if he's a make, win the NFC North. I don't want to see that.
Yeah.
Brandon, what are some teams you're watching closely?
A team I'm watching closely, just all these teams, like I'm going to say probably the Seahawks, just at 9. I think they could go a lot of different directions. They're in a really, really bad spot right now as a franchise. I mean, Drew Lock's, they're on pace to be their starting quarterback right now. And other than that, they only have like 1 or 2 guys that genuinely have like legitimate like star potential. So I think they could go a lot of different ways. So they're going to take a defensive end, a tackle, skill position. Like, it could really go many different ways for them.
Yeah, once again, I would not like to see them take a quarterback. I think it's a rebuilding year. It doesn't do much. I think get a guy in the second round or trade for Baker. And it's a rebuilding year. They need to start building slowly to get players that could help them in 3 years or 4 years. And who knows what you're getting with the quarterback. For me, it's the Chiefs and Packers. I want to see if they take receivers, fulfill that duty. I'm watching the Packers, especially at 22, if Jameson Williams could fall to them, because they need to fill a hole in their team.
They need to fill a lot of holes in their team. They have a lot missing.
Definitely. And then the Chiefs, too. I think Jahan Dotson's a guy they should take to replace Tyreek Hill. We'll talk more about the NFL draft as a whole next week. We'll get to a lot about the Bears, I think. Brandon, one last thing before we go.
Yep.
The Timberwolves, in their playing game and their playoff game, have had animal rights protesters. First, Glue Girl glued herself to the court, and second, Chain Lady chained herself to the hoop. Tuesday night in Memphis, what are you expecting of the anti-Glenn Taylor protesters?
I have no idea. It's interesting to watch. It's always an interesting ESPN headline to see someone did something, but like I feel like gluing themselves to the floor and chaining themselves to the hoop, they've got to be like running out of ideas. What are they gonna do? Like steal the ball?
I mean, they've won every game that protest has happened, so I think Memphis security is gonna be up on Tuesday. They're gonna stop them, and the Grizzlies will win that game. Thank you all for listening. Next week, we'll get into all that happens in the NBA playoffs, NFL full mock draft, as you said, and we'll talk about who the Lakers should hire as their head coach.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for listening.